in the silence of his Brooklyn apartment. Marcus Cole's hands remember melodies. 11 albums, 2 film scores. Yet music is a distant echo now. The taxi on 7th Avenue. A single night that shattered his world. In the darkness, he clings to vibration. Like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Marcus Cole had not heard music in 3 years. Not since the night the taxi ran the red light on 7th Avenue and the world exploded into a silence so absolute it felt like drowning. He remembered the paramedics moving their mouths over him. He remembered the fluorescent lights of the hospital corridor sliding past like a slow film. He did not remember the moment he realized the sound was never coming back. He had been a session musician, piano mostly, though he could coax a melody out of almost anything. His hands had known more songs than his memory could hold. In the years before the accident, he had played on 11 albums, 2 film scores, and more wedding receptions than he cared to count. Music was not what he did. Music was what he was. After the accident, he tried to keep playing. For 6 months, he sat at the upright piano in his Brooklyn apartment and pressed the keys out of habit, out of grief, the way a person might keep setting 2 coffee cups in the morning without understanding why. But watching his fingers move and feeling nothing, no resonance, no color, no sound, was a particular kind of cruelty he could not sustain. He sold the piano in March of the following year. The buyer was a teenage girl whose mother kept apologizing for the low offer. Marcus told her the price was fine. He stood at the window and watched 2 men wrestle it down the front stoop and into a white van, and when the van turned the corner, he sat down on the floor of his empty living room and stayed there until it was dark. What saved him, though he would not call it saving, not for a long time, was a physics lecture he watched by accident on the internet at 2 in the morning. A researcher was explaining how deaf individuals experience music as vibration, how the body is its own instrument, how the bones of the skull can transmit frequency. Marcus watched it 4 times. Then he put on headphones and pressed them flat against the side of his head, not over his ears, but against his jaw, his cheekbone, the crown of his skull, and turned the volume to its highest setting. He felt something, not music, but something. For the next year, Marcus rebuilt his relationship with sound from the ground up, the way an archaeologist brushes centuries of dust from a buried thing, slowly, with enormous patience. He learned that bass frequencies below 250 Hz travel through the floor and up through the legs. He learned that a grand piano, struck hard, produces enough vibration to feel in the sternum from 6 feet away. He learned that placing his palm against the wood of a cello while it played felt to him like warmth, like putting your hand near a fire without touching it. He began composing again, not on paper, in space. He choreographed vibration the way a conductor shapes sound, thinking about where bodies would be in a room, what surfaces would carry what frequencies, how a person standing barefoot on hardwood would receive a bass line differently than someone in leather-soled shoes on concrete. His compositions became installations. He built them in galleries, in churches, in a converted warehouse in Red Hook, where 60 people at a time could remove their shoes and walk through a landscape of sound they could feel but not hear. The work was strange. It was difficult to explain. Critics did not know what to make of it. Some were moved. Some were bewildered. One wrote that it was music for the end of the world, for when we have lost everything but our bodies. Marcus kept that review pinned above his desk. He read it on hard days. 3 years after the accident, a neurotechnology company called Resonance Labs approached him. They had developed an experimental neural implant, a cochlear bypass they called it, that could, in a small but growing number of patients, restore functional hearing. The procedure had a 68% success rate. The surgery carried real risks. There was a chance of facial nerve damage, a chance of chronic pain, a chance, which they named plainly and without softening, of making things worse. They wanted Marcus specifically. His story, they said, his profile, his visibility in the art world. He understood what they were really asking for. They wanted a face for their device, a narrative. the deaf musician who heard music again. He spent 6 weeks unable to decide. He talked to his sister, who told him to do it. She had watched him suffer, she said, and that was its own kind of suffering. He talked to no one else because he did not know who else to ask. What he kept returning to, alone in his apartment at night, was a question he could not answer cleanly. Who was he now? Was he a hearing man living in temporary silence waiting to be restored? Or was he someone new? Someone who had built a different life, a different art, a different way of moving through the world, and who would, in undergoing this surgery, be agreeing to abandon that person without knowing what came next. He sat at a borrowed piano in a friend's studio on a Tuesday afternoon in November and put both palms flat against the lid. He closed his eyes. He felt the vibration travel up his arms and into his chest. He thought about the 60 people who had stood barefoot on the floor of the Red Hook warehouse, their faces changing when the bass frequencies rolled through the building, the way you could watch understanding move across a person like weather. He thought, I made that from nothing, from loss. He called Resonance Labs the next morning and told them no. They were surprised. He could tell, even through the video call interpreter, that they had not expected this. He told them he was grateful. He told them he hoped they found the right person for their study. He told them that he was not done yet, that he had work to do that he did not yet know how to do, and that he needed to stay in the world he had built long enough to find out what it was. That uncertainty, he had learned, was not the opposite of courage. It was the thing courage was made of. He wanted to build something in the floor. Vibration channels hidden under the marble, tuned to frequencies that would be felt but not heard, rising with the tempo of the crowds, swelling at rush hour, quieting at midnight. He called it the weight of silence. He wanted people to feel, just for a moment, what it was like to receive music through your body rather than your ears. He wanted to give them something they could not name. He wanted to leave them changed in ways they wouldn't notice until later, on the train home, looking out a dark window, wondering why they suddenly felt something, wondering what it was. He didn't know if it would work. Most things worth doing, he had found, lived in that particular uncertainty. The place where you have left behind what you knew and have not yet arrived at what comes next. He sat at his drafting table with his plans spread out before him, his pencil moving, his hands still the only instruments he fully trusted. Outside, the city made its noise. Inside, he worked in his silence, and the silence was enough. It was, he had come to understand, not a deprivation at all. It was the material he worked with. It was his, and he would keep building things out of it for as long as he lived.